Welcome back to Goody and Johnny Mo with the Movies, guys. We are here for episode number 16.
Yep.
We are reviewing Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
This is a most impromptu take in the afternoon. Very uncommon for us. Hopefully we won't have any, or at least too many interruptions.
We may have one or two child interruptions, but we're going to try to hopefully keep that to a minimum.
Right now everybody's outside, so hopefully they stay that way for a while.
So what do you got drinking? What do you got going on?
I have a Negro Modelo on tap in my glass. It's actually slightly better than what you can get in the bottle, but it's very tasty. What do you got?
This is a very simple Blue Point toasted lager. Always enjoy this. Always a good time. Cheers.
Cheers.
So Godzilla, King of the Monsters. This film is the third film in this new franchise, in this new giant monster franchise that they've got going on.
Yeah, and I believe that this is probably considered to be the fourth generation of the Godzilla films.
Okay.
It's well into 30 plus movies at this point, but there's been different like groupings of films. You know, the original grouping was basically the original movie in the 50s that extended to about the 70s. Then they had an 80s and above version, and then there was the 2000s and above version, and now this is the Monsterverse.
Yes. Yeah,
which started with Godzilla.
Yes,
in
the first
2014, I believe, and then there was Kong Skull Island.
Yes.
Which at the very end of Kong Skull Island, which most people I think thought, even us going into it, thought Kong Skull Island was just its own movie in and of itself. The Easter egg at the end of Kong Skull Island was basically leading into a whole monsterverse that included the original Japanese monsters.
Yep.
And finally, this is the next movie, so technically the third movie, which has a lot of the original characters from the Godzilla movie.
From the first film. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And I believe
Ken Watanabe's in it again.
Serizawa, I believe.
Yes, Serizawa. And I think there's at least one or two other people that are from that film.
And I believe 2020 is slated for Godzilla versus King Kong, or King Kong versus Godzilla.
Maybe 2021.
2020.
Because there's no way that's coming out next year.
You never know.
I think I want to say 2021.
That's the next movie, which is there was a King Kong vs. Godzilla movies back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So this is going to be kind of a fun retro.
I'll be interested to see that because they made Kong huge in Kong Skull Island.
Yeah, and oddly enough, even though I think Kong was only briefly mentioned or even briefly shown in this
Skull
movie.
Island was talked about quite a bit. There's at least 3 or 4 mentionings of Skull Island, but you see
there was
like a video,
there was an image
of like the back of Kong.
Yeah, and I was actually kind of surprised in that because they introduced a lot of the new monsters in here.
Before we should go any further, we should probably warn everybody.
Spoilers
galore.
So if you've never seen the new Godzilla movie, you shouldn't watch this until you see it. And I highly recommend that if you've never seen any Godzilla movies, which is almost impossible, I think, you see as many as you can. 30 plus films. And that's not even...
take you a long time.
That's only the Godzilla movies. There are actually other movies in the Godzilla universe where, like, the movies that first introduced Mothra and Rodan, where Godzilla wasn't in at all, but later on they all got looped in.
Yeah.
Technically King Kong Skull Island is not a Godzilla film.
No.
It's part of...
But I think because they did that film back in the 60s, it's kind of like, all right, wouldn't it be fun to just bring him into this?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to see I don't want to say remake, but just a modern day version of Kong and Godzilla kind of go at it.
Yeah, and I think what you have going on here is finally an American version of the Godzilla franchise that is not a re-edit of a real pre-existing film. I'll get into that a little later. But the Godzilla movie that the Americans first really attempted back in, I want to say it was the 90s, Roland Emmerich's, with Matthew Broderick.
Is it the one with Matthew Broderick one?
Yeah,
that's got to be the Roland Emmerich.
Yeah, I think that was in the 90s. And that was actually horrendous.
What was that, 97? I want to say 97, 98?
I think it was, late 90s. That was actually horrendous, really panned by the critics. and was supposed to be a trilogy, and the movie ended.
Cliffhanger.
The Easter egg in the movie was, had trilogy, at least had sequel written all over it, and unfortunately, fortunately, it never got green lighted.
No, yeah.
Because it really was horrendous. It's actually one of the weakest films in the entire Godzilla franchise, even though it had a ginormous budget.
Yep.
With all sorts of special effects and all that stuff. But it was horrendous. So this movie is actually wasn't that bad. And I think mainly it's because it had so many monsters in it.
Yeah, no, I think it did. I think it had a variety for basically everybody. Like it had Rodan, it had Mothra,
it had
Ghidorah,
yeah, those are the 4 main monsters. And truth be told, I mean, those literally are the 4 main monsters from the original Godzilla movies. I mean, there was actually a lot of monsters in those movies, but these are the main 4.
Now the one that was in the 2014 film, Muto, right?
Which was like an acronym for something.
Yes, that was made up, right?
Well, they're all made up.
Well, I know.
But that's first appearance.
Okay, thank you.
That was the first appearance. And I don't know if that monster is in this movie.
No, just
clips. I
clips.
think maybe it was killed.
I think it was killed off, and I think you just see clips of it from the last film. I did like the origin of the monsters in this film. I thought that was really well thought out.
Well, see, I mean, yes and no. I mean, one of the problems with this movie, there was a lot of hard sells, I thought. They made it, okay, I mean, they actually had I think the total count of monsters in this movie, whether seen or not, was like 20 or 30 or 40.
Oh, they said like how many are there now, right?
Yeah,
they talk about that?
There's so many of them. But what
were they calling them? They were calling them Titans.
Titans. They were calling them Titans.
They said, how many Titans do you have? Do you count now?
Yeah.
They said something like 23 and counting, like 23, like they're still finding them.
Yeah, and the way they kind of explained it is that these monsters were they were around, I want to say thousands of years ago.
Oh yeah. And
they went into hibernation. But it's like, I mean, it's really odd though, because it's like they're each individual monsters. They're not like part of a species. Right. They're all uniquely
different.
They're all different. How did they come about? I mean, were their families? And how did they just go into hibernation for thousands of years and they're still alive? I mean,
suspend disbelief.
You got to suspend a lot of disbelief because apparently they all just now they all just show up, and then it's like they find all these ancient hieroglyphics that apparently nobody ever knew about.
Well, I thought it was funny that
if you go online, you can find them.
I find it funny that we were waking them up.
Yeah,
because it's not like they were doing it on their own. Like Godzilla had just been, from the 2014 film. Obviously, he had been. He's awoken. He's around. They're kind of tracking him, but they don't know where he is all the time, right? Like that's pretty much what I got of the gist of that. And then they found these other ones that. What's the name of the company that's involved?
Oh, I forget.
So there's like this, evil corporation that's basically overseeing all this, and of course they have basically like hideouts all over the world where these things are, and then they finally
they're just finding they've been there for thousands of years, and
right.
They just kind of find them either buried in ice or
one was in ice, one was in the base of a volcano,
right.
Rodan was in the volcano, Ghidorah was in the ice, and where was Mothra? Mothra was in like South America or like somewhere around there.
And I'll be honest. I think one of the most impressive monsters of the whole group, I think, was Mothra.
Oh, Mothra! I thought that. Well, I'm going to say this. I thought the visuals of this film were outstanding.
Yeah, it really was.
Like if you're you want to, I'm going to put it to you this way, because if you want to go see this film just for the monster fights, you got your money's worth. Because the monster fights in this were fantastic. The special effects were great. The texture of each of the monsters and the creatures I thought was really, really well done. The human side of it, I wanted to go. He, I think, was going more for the Godzilla.
Who he?
You.
Yo,
You wanted to see Godzilla in all of its glory.
Oh, I wanted to see all the monsters because
And-
I'm a huge fan of the original Godzilla movie.
And I was kind of going a little bit more for the human story, and it fails
I
miserably.
think, I think the human story is a real detriment. So before we get to the human story, I think there was like a, I want to say there was a like a political theme to the film. It had like a,
Yeah.
what do you call it?
Well, it was almost kind of like there was almost like, what do we do with these monsters?
Right. Well, there was like a political commentary. It had a political theme, and it addressed basically overpopulation and humanity's abuse of the earth.
Yeah, and it basically, and this is what the Titans. It was theorized that the Titans would basically balance out the Earth.
Yeah, they would
balance out the problems.
They would kind of cleanse the earth a little bit, almost like a I don't want to say like a slash and burn. Like their theory was that when a Titan wipes out an area, it's not dead. New life will spring from it. They would essentially wipe out a decent amount of the population,
and then the Titans would go back into hibernation. Because basically the Earth, once they feel the Earth is kind of back into balance, they would go back into hibernation. So yes, there was that
that theme in the film, and actually that aspect of I like that they approached something like that, because the Godzilla movie from the '90s was really just a dinosaur running around Manhattan.
That's exactly what it was.
It was just nonsense. It was everything was done for comedic and just shock. I don't want to say shock value, but just special effects and helicopters running around shooting this thing. It didn't even look like Godzilla.
No, it was just in the middle of
it failed on every level
of New York City.
Whereas this movie,
it looked like a giant lizard. Like, it didn't look like Godzilla.
That's one of the biggest actual complaints about that film, is that it's one of the only films in the entire franchise where the Godzilla really
doesn't look like Godzilla.
Anything at all like Godzilla.
I think it's the only film.
Yeah.
I mean, even the rubber suits to me looked more, not more realistic, but just design-wise were more of the Godzilla character.
And most of the films are actually rubber suits.
Yes.
So now you have this movie today, and there are previous Godzilla films that actually have like a theme of some sort of commentary. There is they're actually trying to speak to certain things that are reflective in life. The original Godzilla movie is about the effects of weapons and nuclear weapons and the hydrogen bomb and radioactive fallout and the abuse of weapons. And some of the later films involved commercial consumerism. Godzilla versus the Smog Monster was complete insight into pollution. Humanity's abusing the earth and causing pollution. So there is a certain motif in that. So apparently a really good Godzilla movie will touch upon that. The only problem with this movie again was, I think, the human characters really were, I want to say stupid. They just really brought it down. They were unbelievable. They were motivated by the wrong things. They just kept making ridiculous decisions. What was your take on the main human characters?
I mean, I thought it was weak. I really
They were
did.
cardboard.
I really enjoy. I'll say this about the 2014 film. The 2014 film, in my opinion, I enjoyed that film a little bit more than I did this one, because I thought I bought into the human characters a little bit more in that film.
I did too.
Rather than what went on here. The human characters really kind of focus more or less on these two parents that are separated. They have a daughter and they had a son, and the son dies in the 2014 film. Dies off screen. That's almost, I think that's the opening of this film. Yeah. So the opening of the film is the aftermath of what happened with Godzilla in Motu.
Muto is the villain, is the monster.
Muto from the previous.
Oh yeah,
film.
yeah.
So like it opens up on that where basically there's just this devastation around the city, and they're screaming out for their son. They don't find him. Obviously, he's died.
Yeah.
And that obviously hits the parents in such a hard way, to where the point where the father at this point he distances himself, and when they find him, he basically wants these monsters to be wiped out and destroyed. He's like, why are we looking to bring them back? Like, they are going to kill us. Haven't we already seen this? What good can possibly come from this? And in a way, he's right.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing is, because I'm a parent, and I kind of like understood the father's motivation because he lost a child. And if I lost a child, like, how would I feel? I would just be absolutely devastated. So I was trying to put myself into that type of a mindset, but overall, it was just a weak storyline. I tried to get you like emotionally, but it was just it was just such a small pull. Like there wasn't a huge heavy weight emotionally to the human characters.
No, I agree. I think the 2014 movie did the human characters better. In the sense that, I mean, it wasn't annoying. It just wasn't that interesting. Whereas in this movie, the human characters were just so much more annoying. Because basically, you basically have this man and this woman who were husband and wife, and then now they're like kind of separated, and they're getting over the death of their son. And basically, they're making almost every decision they're making is based on what happened to their kid.
Yeah.
They're making big decisions that are going to affect humanity, the planet, life, their current situation. The mother is basically trying to do everything, because of what happened to her son. And the father is basically doing everything with the sole purpose of making sure his daughter doesn't die,
and making sure that these monsters are destroyed.
Right.
Like he wants the monsters to be destroyed. He doesn't. He gets like shocked when they find out that there's so many, and that this corporation knows where they are and is tracking them. And he's wondering why they're not just destroying them right then and there in their hibernated state.
Yeah, but they just play up this card where it's like every single thing he does is like, I just want to make sure my daughter is okay.
Yes.
And it's like, even if that meant killing off an entire continent, as long as his daughter was okay, that was enough. And it's like, you know what? You shouldn't be making the decisions because you're emotionally involved.
Yeah, he's compromised.
And he's absolutely emotionally compromised. The mother almost kind of takes the high ground, and she embraces this philosophy of she's basically going to save the earth by waking up all the monsters and having them
let them cleanse
everything. But it actually is not a bad idea. It's a hard idea. It's it reminds me a lot of Thanos's rationale.
I had a feeling that was coming up.
In all honesty, Thanos is basically going to make the hard decision and kill off everybody so that the universe can survive. And this woman basically says, we're going to wake up all the monsters, and they're going to wipe out a whole lot of people, but that will ensure the survival of Earth. But what happens is you find out that almost everything she's doing is fueled by the grief of her son, which makes it kind of undermines the argument a little bit. And the father's just blatant. There's one scene where he doesn't even know where his daughter is, but he's leaving. He's getting on a helicopter and he's just flying to North America. And it's like, everyone's like, where are you going? What are you doing? Where are you going? You're going to get a helicopter. Where are you going? You don't know where you're going. I think one of the things that I found annoying about this film was they were constantly showing the monster battles from the human point of view.
Okay.
And the only reason they could consistently do that, because all the people in this movie consistently made the stupidest decision to get as close to the monsters as possible.
Let's stay here and watch.
Let's land between their legs, and oh my god, hello, land a mile away. There's one scene where the monsters are arising from the base that they just left, and they're all standing there,
watching
the monsters come up. It's like you're gonna get killed.
Yeah.
Any second.
Start moving.
Run away.
And people did.
Yeah,
And
people are getting
people
killed.
did.
And I'm like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
You know, and you got to keep in mind, everyone says, all right, suspension of disbelief. That makes sense, but
no, there was a lot of suspension.
When there's a lot of suspension,
there's a level of suspension, and the
Yeah.
higher level of suspension to me, it's almost like the weaker the film.
right? The higher the level of suspension and the amount of times you have to suspend it.
Yes.
Like you literally like these people getting too close to the action, and the action being giant freaking monsters fighting, destroying things, smashing buildings.
It's utter destruction.
Like when people get too close to the monsters 3, 4, and 5 times, it's like, are you kidding me? What are you doing? And it's like, okay, well, I guess they just, like the filmmakers is like, well, we're going to do it from their point of view. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense. Like, I think they could have shown it from a distance. But I mean, literally, they was like they were like right there, and then they're like, "Oh my god!"
Well, I think it's a hard balance, because what are you going to see these movies for? Everybody knows when you're going to see these monster films, you're going primarily to see these two monsters, fight.
Yeah.
So, how much of the human story do you include, and are you spending a lot of time on that? And how does it really connect with the rest of the story? And it just seemed like it seemed like they just kind of had the human story in there, but to me it was not well developed enough.
Right, it absolutely was not well developed.
I would have rather, Millie Bobby Brown, that's her name, right?
Who's that?
Millie? That's the daughter.
Oh, the daughter.
So Millie Bobby Brown's in this. If anyone has seen Stranger Things, she plays 11. Fantastic young actor. I enjoy her in this, but she even puts herself into some ridiculous situations as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so they keep putting themselves in these, like, if you're the audience and you know that they're constantly putting themselves in these bad situations, at what point are you like, I just don't care anymore? You keep doing the same repeated. You're.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going upstairs to avoid the killer. I know the killer can follow me. It's like, how many times can you keep doing this?
Right, okay. So a couple things about the daughter that total suspense. Like apparently, apparently there's a device that like the mother had
and the father
kind of prototyped it.
Yep.
They prototyped it, and then the mother
she further developed
it, and it works, and it's either used to, I don't know if it's used to
it's
control
basically
the monsters, but it's
used to target. It definitely influences the monster. Where it can basically you can program it to almost. You basically have to sync it so that it matches the same frequency as the monster.
Right.
And once you synchronize that, you can almost choose a target so that it can specifically go after something. Now, I think that was the original intent of the mother's character, and how they were going to kind of try to almost harness these titans to do what they needed to do in order to help kind of cleanse the earth in the way that they saw fit and what was their vision.
Right.
But of course, it doesn't go that way, and they basically started waking up. There's even a point. There's a point of dialogue that she makes. That's like we're waking them up. We're basically getting them all up at once rather than gradually, because the original plan was for them to gradually get them up, and then I forget what happens, but something basically speeds that along, and now we're waking them all. We're waking up these main ones.
I think that
as much as possible.
that might have had to do with Gita. But before we get into Gita, so my suspension of disbelief was okay with just the existence and creation of this, laptop that could control the monsters.
Right.
It's like, okay, you just got to accept that they were able to figure something out and do it great. But the thing that annoyed me was at one point, the daughter steals the laptop. Great, what she can do. But apparently, she can use that device like a wizard.
Right.
Okay, not for nothing, this is the daughter of scientists. The children of scientists do not necessarily have the knowledge or the ability to, show up on, bring your kids to work day and be totally versed in everything that they're doing. It made no sense. I'm like,
if they would have shown that she was somehow technically savvy or had some type of part or help with her mom in making this in flashbacks or something, maybe you would have had me buy into it. But the fact that she literally just kind of flips open the monitor
and she's able to
and
do
starts to like figure it all out.
She's she's a frustrated teenager dealing with the she's not this scientific genius. Not for nothing. I don't think the mother was sitting there at home creating this thing with the daughter on her lap, going,
Right.
I need you to know how to do this in case of I'm like, how does she even know how to do this? So then they had the scene where when she steals it, she's like in some forest outside of Boston, and she needs to get to Fenway Park.
They got to Fenway.
Well, okay, so she gets to Fenway Park on foot through like monsters are already destroying Boston. She gets to Fenway Park like that, which is supposed to be like, it was supposed to be like a shelter for everybody in the city, and there's like nobody there. And she gets in there and she like goes into the control room and she just plugs things in, and once she knows where the control room is. How do you get that?
Well, because she's using it as an amplifier.
Yeah.
Right. She's using the speakers of the stadium as an amplifier to boost the signal of the device that was made to kind of basically lure them all in.
Yeah.
Right.
But like apparently everything that's in Fenway Park in the room that she knows how to get to or was able to find, not locked or anything, like she's just plugging things in.
Gets in.
And things are blaring out all through Boston. And I'm like, and you just sit there and say like, how was she able to do that? And this just comes down to the writing. Like they needed that to get done in order to progress the story.
So that's how they did it.
They did it.
Yeah.
That's what she did.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's and that's just there's so many instances of that where just things don't make sense. Oh, so then after so now she's in the park and she attracts Ghidra to the park, to Fenway Park, where Ghidra's like a giant 3-headed monster that's shooting like electricity bolts that could pretty much lay waste to Fenway Park in about 5 seconds. The whole thing in 5 seconds.
Yep.
She is able to outrun the destructive wake of this monster on foot and get away.
Where all those people died in the ice, in the ice scene earlier and couldn't get away.
It's like, and the parents somehow figure out that she's going home, and she's somehow able to find her house in an entire like almost leveled Boston area on foot. Not for nothing, the parents are able to drive through a Boston that is pretty much rubble and find their house somehow. And she is in a bathtub.
Right. Oh, I forgot that.
With a slab on top.
I forgot
but her
that.
hands out so they could see her. And
I forgot that she was.
They had to revive her. I'm like, was she like? They almost made it seem like she drowned in the bathtub. Like I don't get like they revived. It was just like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, there was a lot.
And most of all that was really just the people stories. You got all these scientists and army people sitting in there talking about what we're gonna do, and you got the husband going, well,
just kill them all.
Just kill them all, and okay, I need to go find my daughter. It's like, you know what? Okay, you need to get out of the room and do whatever you want to do because you're not contributing to the overall.
Well, it's because
problem.
he came up with the machine. He was one of the. He was
yeah.
One of the
They brought
scientists.
him in
Because him and his wife separate at one point, and his wife ends up being with these eco-terrorists.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, they need him to possibly rein her in or somehow figure out a way to do something with the device.
Now, what's his real name? That
Oh,
actor.
I wanted to look that up before we shot this, but I forgot.
I don't remember his real name. But oddly enough, he was in Peter Jackson's
King
was.
Kong. Yeah, he was in King Kong.
Played
he was the actor.
He was like the actor,
he was the
pretty boy action star. And so I found that actually kind of funny that he has been in a modern day King Kong movie.
Yes.
And a modern day Godzilla movie.
Yep.
So I actually
not the same universe, but at least he's been in both, which is fun.
Yeah. So the one thing they did right, I think, with Ghidra is that they originally made it sound like Ghidra was just one of these titans from Earth's past. And it's like, okay, like all these monsters, like Ghidra was always like the ridiculous monster. He was just, he was this huge three-headed dragon with wings that shot electricity. It was like crazy. But in the original Godzilla movies, he was from another planet. He's like from outer space somewhere. They don't even, God knows where. He's like an alien that comes to Earth. And they did that in this movie.
That in this.
And I like that. They talk about that Ghidorah
somehow they talk about, was it the
space.
DNA? Like they figured it out somehow. Whatever like samples or something that they had, they basically said this does not originate from Earth.
Well, so this is one of the things that I just found conveniently annoying with the film is that, they're trying, like, it's, 2019, and they're trying to figure out, what's the story about Ghidorah, and, one of the, computer whiz girls, whatever, goes online and is able to find online an ancient hieroglyphic that apparently no one has ever seen or no one has ever figured out what it meant, and it speaks to how Ghidorah came from the skies, came from the stars, and it's like if this thing was online, somebody knew about it. Like, who put it there to even be found? But I'm just like, they're like, oh, look what I found. This is the answer to the thousands of year old questions.
I know.
It was crazy.
Overall, it's just this film.
Yeah.
I shake my head at.
I understand that plot lines have to progress.
Yes.
And I've said this in the past. The story, the mark of a good screenwriter is making the things that happen be as plausible as possible.
Agreed. Even as outrageous as they can be. They can be completely outrageous.
Right.
But if you write it in a way
that makes it
plausible, makes the audience buy in to what you are putting on screen.
There's a certain level of suspension of disbelief that's acceptable.
Yes.
And then things will fall into place. But when there's too many things that you have to accept, and put on top of that just poorly fleshed out characters, it's like, these characters in like their motivations and their thing and their psyches and why and their reason why they do things, it's like
well, it's flawed. It's flawed. But this is why I think I actually enjoyed the 2014 film so much better, is because there's always, listen, with the Godzilla film, there's always going to be suspension of disbelief, and you go into the film knowing that you're going to be seeing giant monsters on screen.
Right.
But when I went in there and I'm watching actors like Bryan Cranston and who was I think like Aaron Johnson and
Ken Watanabe.
Ken Watanabe, yes. That the suspension of disbelief with that film was much more plausible than what I had seen in this film.
Yeah. I just felt that like what they were doing in the 2014 made more sense. It just wasn't that interesting.
Well, it's just like, okay, but here's the thing. At the end of the day,
the human part was a little.
The humans in this film are banking on Godzilla having their back and defending them.
Yeah,
it's like he's a monster. Like he just sees another monster and is going to go after it. Like, it's not like he's trying to protect the human race.
He's not in line with what anybody else is doing the same.
No,
nobody's talking to him.
It's like we're not like the device that was made. They didn't try using that on Godzilla, right? Unless I completely missed that.
I don't think so.
I mean, they did it with Mothra. They did it. They tried doing it with Ghidorah, and I don't know if they ever did it with Rodan or not.
I'm not sure.
But I'm pretty sure they didn't do that with Godzilla. Like, how is it that we're banking on this guy having our back? See, that's why I think it's going to be so interesting when we go into Kong and versus Godzilla, because, okay, who are we rooting for? Like, are we actually rooting for a monster? Obviously, in this film, we're rooting for Godzilla to win because Ghidorah is just a...
Right.
He is such an evil monster.
Ghidorah is bad.
Right.
And oddly enough,
so is Rodan.
Rodan and Ghidorah kind of team up.
Yeah. So and then Mothra kind of teams up with Godzilla.
Yeah. And to be honest, okay, so parallel to the original Ghidorah movie was basically Mothra against Ghidorah, trying to enlist the help of Godzilla and Rodan, who basically just wanted to fight each other, and then they finally wound up being all three of them versus Ghidorah. So that to me was kind of interesting to see that Rodan kind of was on the bad side now. So in terms of the other monsters, so I think Godzilla looked really good. I think Ghidorah looked really good.
I thought Ghidorah was great, especially after he hatched.
Yeah.
You know, he goes into this cocoon, and then he hatches, and it's the I'm talking Mothra. So Mothra goes into this
Mothra
cocoon.
hatches.
I'm sorry, I meant
Yeah,
Mothra. So
yeah.
Mothra goes into this cocoon and then hatches. I thought Mothra looked great.
Mothra
but
was really
Ghidorah
cool.
looked
Yeah,
fantastic.
Ghidorah was just,
Look, this
big,
three-head.
wild looking.
I mean, you see this and you're like, okay, everyone's screwed. Because how do you defeat this three-headed dragon?
And if you cut his head off, it grows back.
It grew back.
And I don't remember that happening in any of the
Because
original
Godzilla gets pissed and he bites it off.
Yeah.
He bites off one of the heads and you're like, that's awesome. Okay, that's one head down, two to go. And then all of a sudden the head grows back.
Grows back.
So I thought that was really interesting.
Mothra was really cool. They actually put a lot of special effects into Mothra. They made it like very like kind of like glittery, like light special effects.
Well, it's almost like he
even
like
sound.
heals.
Yeah.
He's got like almost like a healing ability or something to even help and shield Godzilla a little bit during the fight with Ghidorah. And I thought that was really cool how Mothra kind of comes in and almost saves the day for Godzilla.
Yeah, and he's actually kind of, really kind of tough. Now, whereas Rodan, I think, was, in my opinion, I think the weakest of the four.
The weakest of the four. I mean, it looks like a giant pterodactyl. For the most part.
and almost like, I almost want to say like, almost too bulky. Like,
I thought it was too big.
No, not too big, too fat.
Too fat.
Like the body proportions. It was just like he was too bulky. He wasn't. I felt he would have been better if he was a little leaner and showed a little bit more mobility as opposed to like just being able to just do a couple things.
Yeah.
I think Rodan was the weakest portrayal.
Well, I definitely agree. I agree to that. But I think at the end of the day, when you go into this, you're going to see these monster fights.
Yeah. Now,
Like,
even though they talk about a lot of other monsters, they don't show. Well, they actually do show a whole bunch, but they're almost like cameos.
Oh, this was at the end. This was at the end.
They show. They have
yeah.
ones where one's like I think
one's like a giant woolly mammoth.
One's like a giant woolly mammoth. One's like a giant spider.
Yep.
And there is actually a giant spider type monster in the original Godzilla series. I forget the name of it.
There's a couple others that I know I'm forgetting, but
and they really just do them as quick cameos, glossovers. They don't really get too involved in the action. They're just kind of showing up, doing.
But it basically shows.
If they show them awake, they show them like coming out of the ground, they're doing stuff.
But they disperse at the end, right? Like, don't they kind of like? Because at one point you see them on screens on TV, and they're just trashing their cities wherever they're located.
Yeah.
And then somehow, magically, they all appear in Boston at one point because that's where Godzilla is. Don't they all make their way to Boston?
Yeah, and apparently even a woolly mammoth can, wherever it happens to be on Earth, it's gonna get to Boston.
Made it to Boston
somehow.
So I know some of these things. Like it's not. I'm not sure how these.
Not that many of them can fly. In all honesty, very few of them can fly.
All these ones, they weren't all in America. They couldn't have been.
No, they were all over the.
So they were all over the world, and then all of a sudden they end up in Boston. So to me, it's okay. Again, we're talking that whole suspension of disbelief. I mean, overall, look, this movie to me, if you want to see the monsters and the special effects, go enjoy. Yeah. You're gonna love the fight scenes. It's fantastic. If you were going for the human element, you're gonna be disappointed because it's just not that good. Plain and simple.
So, a funny story. After we saw the movie, I was in the car with my wife, and she goes, "How was the movie?" And I was like, "Oh, it was." And I give her, quick 5-second thing, not 45-minute diatribe like this, but quick 5. And she's like, "Okay," and then she goes to me. She goes, "How was the king?" And I'm looking. I'm like, did she just ask me how was the king? I'm like, what? Is she referring to Godzilla as the king? I mean, the movie is Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Right. She goes, "Oh, how was the king?" And I'm like, why on earth would she refer to Godzilla as the king?
But is that what she meant?
I'm like, how is Godzilla? And she's like, no, not Godzilla, the king. I'm like, what are you talking about? And apparently what she was talking about is the leader of the terrorist group is the actor who plays Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones, who incidentally is not a king. He's not a king.
He was a
hand. I know I didn't share the word, but apparently for some reason in her head she was considering that guy to
Gotta
be
love
the
that.
king. And she's like, how was the king? And I'm like,
We'll try and get Carmen on one of these episodes.
She'll. Well, so apparently Desi, Chris's wife Desi, has agreed to not make a cameo until at least episode 100. Whereas I'm sure my wife is going to hold out to episode like 300. But
Which probably might not happen.
we're going to hold it to it.
We're gonna
hold it to it. We're going to hold it to it.
Why don't you give your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. And I'm not going to give my whole history of the Godzilla franchise.
We'll say it's extensive. We could say that.
We could actually. I would like to do a side episode just to give people insight into.
We could do a side history of Godzilla.
Because if you promise to do that, then I won't say anything. Because if I say anything here, you're going to edit it out.
Now that will be in the uncut version.
Yeah, there's going to be a thing that says 30 minutes later of John's intense description of the Godzilla franchise history. We'll get to our final thoughts. I enjoyed the movie absolutely for the monsters. Hated it for the people. Liked that they attempted to put sort of make it a political spin, make it almost like a concept film. I like that they did that. I just wish it would have worked better. I'm looking forward to King Kong versus Godzilla. And I believe that their intention is to make a lot more movies.
I think so too. I think you're going to see more monsters in the future after the King versus Godzilla.
So I was a little surprised that they didn't give like everybody their own movie. Like there was a Godzilla movie, then there was a King Kong movie. I was almost surprised that they didn't do like a Mothra movie and a Rodan movie, and then
would people see that though? Just for those monsters alone?
I guess they said, you know what? Let's just do this and go for broke.
Yeah.
But now you're at a point where I think it worked and it made money, and you're 3 movies in, and you've almost already introduced all the major players.
Big ones, yeah.
So like now you have King Kong versus Godzilla, movie 4. What are you doing for movie 5, 6, and 7? Like that I don't know. So. We'll see what happens with that. Well,
listen, a lot of it's going to be based on box office. How this movie finishes up.
A whole new Godzilla, grouping of movies.
Yeah.
And we'll see how far that goes.
Domestically, this movie's done so. I think it's probably the people could say it underperformed, but overseas, it's doing very well. Overseas, people are going to see this movie. So.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think with support like that going into the future, especially with Kong and Godzilla, you'll definitely draw some people in. That's for sure.
So a little preview of what's coming up. Chris and I are actually going to see X-Men Dark Phoenix tonight.
Yep.
And so I'm pretty sure that will be our next episode.
That'll be the next episode. We'll definitely have something hopefully by the end of the week with that one.
And you guys all heard it. Remember, Chris is allowing me to do an episode to talk about the Godzilla. So you all heard it.
We will try to bring that to you. We might even try doing some retro episodes. We're going to do some retro movie reviews, some movies over the last few years. Ones that, because obviously John and I only started this earlier this year. There's a lot of movies that he and I continually talk about over the last 10 years that have come out. That we definitely want to throw out there.
And Chris and I actually, in the past year, we've actually kind of gotten into seeing some re-releases, some older movies on the big screen.
Yeah.
We actually saw a number last year, and we actually
3 last year, right?
At least 3.
Yeah.
We saw Die
Hard, Jaws,
and
Superman the movie. Yeah.
And this year, I wound up seeing To Kill a Mockingbird, but we might be on slate to see. Clockwork Orange and Shawshank Redemption. On the big screen, which is great. And we can even talk about those films too. So I think that'll be fun. Cool.
So I think with that, guys, we're going to head off for the rest of the weekend. We hope you guys enjoy. Please remember to like, share, comment on this video. Tell everybody you know about this channel of ours. We're trying to get this going.
Shout out to soon-to-be first-time viewer, Adrian Gonzalez.
Yes, absolutely.
So hopefully you get to this episode.
So thank you guys very much. We hope you enjoy. See you next time with the movies, guys.
Take care.
Cheers.